Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And as I indicated earlier, I'm not normally on this committee, and I'm very appreciative of the committee for allowing me to participate. Let's pick up with the fund, since that's where Chairman Scott ended. You indicated in your testimony that if we had no more claims, the debt would continue to rise on this, and that's because of old debt and interest payments. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
And you also said that one of the things we might be able to do, because a lot of the companies that were responsible did go bankrupt, one of the things you indicated we might be able to do would be to forgive interest or part of the debt, that might help stabilize the fund as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did present options in our work from last year, and it did have some of those considerations that we laid out.
Because one of the things that my current coal operators tell me is that if they just had to pay for the responsibilities of what they had now, as opposed to paying for the mines that are no longer, or the mining companies that are no longer around, they believe that a reasonable number could be achieved and reached without a whole lot of gnashing of teeth and wailing going on. Do you concur in that opinion, or do you have no opinion?
It depends, and it depends on the underlying assumptions that's based on.
Okay. And I appreciate that, but I do think it's something we should continue to work on. Assistant Secretary, we heard earlier from one of our miners, and he's still here, and he said something about tape at one point in his testimony, and I'm wondering, you indicated that the machines measuring the dust and so forth were better today, but I've had miners tell me, even if they weren't asked to by the company, because they were afraid the mine might go out of business, they would put tape over the sensors on the monitors. Does the new equipment have the ability to thwart those types of efforts?
Yes, sir. The new equipment senses any kind of tampering, lack of movement, lower than expected dust, and it will void the sample and communicate that electronically at the end of the shift.
So if it's lower than expected, would that be, how is that measured?
Well,
is that measured real time, or is it over like every hour?
It's in real time. It's a continuous monitor. It provides, and I'm going to tell you, NIOSH did a great job getting this developed and out there, and I hope they're successful with the quartz monitor. But
all right.
The machine senses when somebody's trying to tamper with it, and it will void itself if it senses that.
All right.
And
now,
we also sample with a parallel system, sir, that is a gravimetric system. Our samples are not tampered with by anybody. They're under the supervision of MSHA.
all right. So we've gotten into this whole controversy over OSHA standards, NIOSH, and MSHA, and you indicated earlier that you all could not count the same way that OSHA does because you weren't allowed to count PPEs as being equipment that could be used. Why is that, and how do I fix it?
It's a nuance, sir, of the mining law. PPE is not allowed to count towards compliance.
So what you're saying to me is get a bill. Am I correct in that?
Yes, sir. There are people that use PPE, but it does not count towards their compliance.
All right, and then is there something we need to do to get more technology on the PPEs? Because if it's too cumbersome to wear in certain parts of the mine, got to be ways that we can make it less cumbersome with our space-age technology?
I think there is, and that's why we're out for an RFI on that very subject.
Okay, and explain that to me. What are you doing in the RFI on that subject?
An RFI is the request
Yes, sir, I
for
know,
information.
but what are you doing on it? What are you
from
looking
all
for?
the providers. We're gathering information from all the providers, and we'll see if there's acceptable ways we can go about this.
Because it would seem to me we ought to be able to make that a much simpler process. And as I said before, we've got the silica problem we know about, we've got the coal we know about, but there's also, in every mountain's a little different, and we've got different substances out there, and instead of trying to chase the different substances, it seems to me if we give clean air to the miners, we're solving a lot of problems and maybe even reducing costs over time. You agree?
I think that's correct, and I think that's been the wonderful thing that's been shown about CPDM is that when you get that information on their actual exposures into the hands of the operators and the people that are actually there running machinery and doing the work, they will manage that correctly. That's why we're at plus 99% compliance, sir. So I think any time to the extent that people are educated on that and that people have the immediacy of feedback, I think they will manage that process very well.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you. I want to yield now